is gonna come on now, and I thought what we would do is we just move up the governance document right away, and then we'll deal with the state plan and the MOU. So we do have a PowerPoint.
We do. Who's Jason?
What we tried to do is to formalize who are you, who are we, what are our duties and responsibilities, and then how the governance of this board should work. And Cameron Wood, who's an attorney helping out the Department of Labor, and Annie worked on this document. So
Starting with governance, right?
Yeah.
yes, governance. So we got 2 pages. One is the PowerPoint, what is this, why are we doing it, and then the actual document, which we sent the document out in, I think, a Word version to you, or PDF, a couple days ago.
Okay, so James, I might need you to just scoot next, you and Tom buddy up. Hi folks, I'm Annie Noonan with the Vermont Department of Labor. Thank you. Can everybody hear me? And if for any reason when I would say this, if anybody's speaking and you can't hear, give the I can't hear you sign, and then the person speaking should be able to get that, okay? So I have kind of a big mouth. I think most of you know that and would appreciate it at a time like this. So the chair, Frank Coffey, asked us to put together a governance document for the State Workforce Investment Board. First thing I want to tell you is, as you know, a lot of what's happening with WIOA is in flux. I'm going to just take a few moments just to kind of give you that. We are no longer the State Workforce Investment Board. You're now the State Workforce Development Board. But for ease of us, we'll still say SWIB today, but at some point we'll have to, understand that by actual statute, it is the State Workforce Development Board. The other thing I want to let you know, I spent 2 days with Region 1 states and down at the U.S. Department of Labor. For those of you who don't know which states constitute Region 1, it's all of New England, New York, New Jersey, Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. And we were down at the Boston office with USDOL, specifically just dealing with WIOA and WIOA implementation. There are a bunch of things coming up that a lot of us will be involved in. Many of us have been on phone calls consistently. This has been just this massive amount of work that has involved a lot of agencies and state government, but particularly the core partners under WIOA, which are the Vermont Department of Labor, the Agency of Education, Adult Education, and the Division of both Rehab under the Agency of Human Services. Obviously, a lot of kudos to the folks who are going to present today. Hopefully Cam will be here, potentially by the time we get to the document, the state plan document, but if not, you're going to have to suffer with me again. But I do want to say that James Smith, on behalf of Voc Rehab, was the key point person for the division. Tom is here today, but Kate Nicolette with the Agency of Education and with Tom did a lot of work for the Agency of Ed Piece, and there are other people here involved who did a lot of work. I'm sure Pixie was involved with AO, the Adult Ed commenting. There's a lot of work that needs to go on, but the reason that we put this together is, at Frank's request, to just basically explain, and it responds to some of the questions like, why are we all here? I think the most important thing to tell you is that by federal law and state law, we have to have a State Workforce Investment Board. That is the governing body which allows the state of Vermont to receive federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding. And that's not just Vermont Department of Labor's money, which is Title I and III, but it's also Title II, which is Agency of Ed's money, and it's Title IV, which is the Division of Voc Rehab's money. So in order to draw down federal dollars, we must establish that. Because the state of Vermont is such a small state, population-wise, the size of the city of Buffalo, New York, we are considered a single state plan. We have operated in that way. The feds do actually are supportive of think that that's a good thing for Vermont because it gives us a lot of cohesion and brings the key people into the process in a very unified way. They actually support that. But what we're trying to do here is to explain to you what you have the formal document, and then you have the fancy six shorter page PowerPoint, which I'm going to walk you through, but I won't, but the highlights. So, in essence, you have to be established because of the federal law and state law. You're also very well discussed in state statute in Vermont. In addition to that, your key role is to assist the governor of the state of Vermont in the development of a state plan and in the development of the state workforce system and the operation of the state workforce system. You're also to advise the governor on the development and implementation of this system, reviewing policy, making sure programs are aligning. So if this board were to see things glitching up or not working well, that is your role to identify, talk about that, and if necessary, involve a recommendation or a policy change to the governor's office. One of the things that we always said is we should avoid duplication whenever possible because there are scarce resources. The feds get it. They're basically saying there's not a lot of money around, whether it's state money or federal money, that you should avoid duplication when possible. Don't, figure out how to align the system, how to streamline the system, and not basically recreate the wheel time and time again. Support training, a key function. This board is intended to support training, education, career pathway, and support services for individuals who are underrepresented in the workforce, underserved in the workforce, persons with any type of barrier to employment, including disabilities, but that could also be language skills. It could be any type of disability that keeps somebody from getting a job to start with and holding a job. And to develop outreach to individuals and employers, anybody we think who could benefit from getting involved with the state workforce development system, which includes education and training. Okay. One of the other roles is for you to monitor state and federal performance accountability measures, reporting, and audit reports. That's something that has not really come to the board before. I mean, let me just say that. I'm looking to I don't think the board has seen federal reports before. Audit
I don't think the
reports.
full board, maybe the executive committee, but not the full board.
So that's one of the things that is intended, that you are looking at federal measures. So we all have to negotiate measures with the feds on our programs. So you will see those federal negotiated measures, and then the feds audit us and tell us how we did. Did you meet your measures? Did you fall short? What are your explanations? So those reports will come to this board. I don't think necessarily that has happened before. We are supposed to be looking at real training programs. They use this term a number of times through the entire Workforce Investment Act law. Real-time labor market needs. Real-time. Don't train people to be bookbinders. There are no bookbinding jobs in the state of Vermont. Frankly, there are no bookbinding jobs in the country anymore. They're basically saying real-time labor market needs. That's what you should be spending your efforts on in terms of education and training and your funding. Conduct effective assessment of individuals. That would basically be the one-stop partner staff obligations. That would be labor staff, voc rehab staff, our partner agencies, TANF, REACH UP. Everybody should be assessing what does this person need? What is their barrier? What can they do? Develop and review policies to ensure that the one-stop centers, including the infrastructure, the service, the data systems, this is all about aligning resources between the core partners and everybody else. I say core because there is, and we'll come to that, unified partners, which are basically those 3 agencies that are required, but everyone else is considered a partner. And we're supposed to be looking at policies and assessing whether or not it's working. So if we are able to find, if somebody raises their hand and says, I have a wonderful program and I am not being in any way integrated into this system. I can't get my foot in the door, or I'm trying to launch a problem and I can't get data, or I am working with clients and I'm sending them over here and they're hitting a wall. They're not getting what they need. Somebody's not delivering. This is all about ensuring that people who are in the system, are being funded by the system. I'm talking the partners, the organizations are serving the person. This is about serving people and getting people educated and into jobs. The other thing that they talk a lot about is supporting digital literacy, obviously credentials, professional development with certificates and credentials and other pathways to employment. Not to the exclusion. I wanted to say this, that one of the things that when we first were reading through the 1142-page document, that one of the things that we saw was that they were talking a lot about recognized credentials, but then they do give some leeway. They have a term that's sort of a little bit broader, sort of, in terms of leading to. So we do think we have some flexibility, but we will be held to measures which are, as we can see, things like second quarter earnings, fourth quarter earnings, those kinds of, they're very tangible in some regard. So when you're not moving in that direction to show wages after sort of exit at second quarter and fourth quarter, we can all be held accountable. We have to make sure that all of our balance is such that we're showing attainment of credentialing, attainment of education, or attainment of wages. So we're all looking, and just so you know, the measures that we have to work on are not produced yet by the U.S. Department of Labor. Here's a real funny fact. In fact, we have to have our state plan up and finalized, the unified state plan between the Agency of Education, the Department of Labor, and Voc Rehab, adult ed, also under Agency of Ed. That has to be up and basically stamped by March 3rd. The federal regulations on WIOA will not be out. The final federal regulations will not be out until sometime later. We keep saying, what does that mean? So we are going to be writing a state plan that might have things that we've identified that the feds will change in their final regulations. So what we were told, and Rose was down there with me, what we were more or less told was, do the best you can, make your best guess, develop what you think we're going to be looking for. So it was one of these, like, old Johnny Carson, like, I think they're going to want this. So we were really, we're doing our best, but it is craziness because we have to issue this final state plan on the 3rd of March and their regulations. So as an example, eligible training provider list that we've all been talking about, I think, so we had a drop dead deadline. They gave us 22 days from when they issued the reg, 22 days to get it up and going. Guess what? They just extended it. A week ago, they sent out a memo saying, "Oh, we're going to extend it 6 months." Wow. This had to be done in June. They told us last week it's extended. We're like, okay. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. At the meeting down in Boston, we asked, how much of this is going to be? Are you going to come back and say it's extended or it's changed? And the answer is probably some. Anyway, sorry, I just needed to share with you how crazy this is. Okay, so the membership, am I on that, on page 3? So the membership is established by federal and state law. The board is supported by WIOA funds. Members are appointed by the government, but the your appointment must comply with the federal or state. So each of you are here because you hold a certain designation either under federal or state law. Key piece, 51% of this board must be business representation. But then there's another 20% of a different mix of people. So there's all sorts of mixes on this, and every time we add somebody or somebody resigns, we have to figure out what seat did they hold, did that kick off the balance of power? I think I skipped something. Did I skip a page? No, you can read. Members can be replaced by the governor because they resigned or they failed to attend 50% of the meetings in a 2-year period. They no longer hold the qualifications for which they were appointed. So, for example, the state representatives, the state people from the state who sit here, myself, other people here, if we're gone, then whoever our successors are hold the seat because they are designated by title. Proxy voting, if allowed by statute. If the statute authorizes a designee, then the person may vote if that person is here as the designee for the day. So people who are here today as designees, if you want, from our perspective, we're good. And we got people on the phone who are here. The committees can be appointed by the chair, and I do believe that the chair is going to be appointing some committees at some point to be working on a few things. We do have a youth council. I think I forgot to put that in here. There is a youth council existing. It is in conformance with the federal law. I think we handed out the youth council list last time, but if not, we'll get you that. Okay. So one of the things that we thought about was, let's go back, how many people here have been involved with this SWIB for more than a few years? Raise your hand. So some of you remember that there was an executive committee, and then there came questions from the legislature. Do you have an executive committee? Who authorized you to have an executive committee? Do they operate under any principles or guidelines, blah, 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 blah. So the executive committee, in essence, stopped meeting because there was some questions about how that, how was it constituted? Was it properly constituted? But under a governance document, you can establish an operating committee. We don't call it executive, we call it operating. And the purpose of which would be to conduct certain activities on behalf of the board between meetings and to address anything that is urgent or time sensitive. So what we tried to do was to put together a group of people. This is 13 members, 7 would be a quorum. You see the process, which would basically still be a business majority. And then people who generally need to get documents signed or approved that sometimes pop up. And that would basically be sometimes commerce, if there's a grant where we often will say, run up to Burlington and say, Frank, we need you to sign this because we got to file this grant and it just came out. Those kinds of documents. Sometimes I get a document on a program that's funded under WIOA where we actually really need to make a decision. Are we going to change where the veterans job counselors sit? If we're going to do that, oh boy, the modification is due tomorrow. It may be one of those things where we need an approval from somebody and we've got to get it before a group and we don't have another meeting till February and we've got to make a decision in the next 2 days and get it before somebody to approve because the document. So in essence, what we're saying is it is not to replace the work, but it would be if there were certain types of activities. And I've listed some of what those are. The operating committee would still have to comply with open meeting law, report out all decisions within 3 to 10, and to hold that thought because I'll show you where the 3 comes in. They would basically, the things that they would do, for example, would be participate in meetings to promote the board work, the work of the board. So for example, if there was a panel, UVM says, can we have somebody from the SWIB come? We would basically say, does the operating committee want to participate in it? Do we want to do this? Those kinds of things. Representing us, the SWIB. Review and respond to state or legislative proposals. This may be things where we are getting things dumped on us by a committee, a state committee, legislative committee, and somebody needs to look at it and say, do we like this? Does the SWIB support this or not? And it may be something where we don't have time to pull everybody in for that. I'm not suggesting that it would always be that, but we may wind up in a very quick situation. Respond and review, oversee the performance of the core partners, so relative to the necessary work that they have to do, and authorize submission and report to documents. As I said, where we run up and get Frank to sign things sometimes. The other thing would be, somebody calls up and says, we're really having a problem, somebody is not doing what they need to do, this is really falling down, we need this fixed because this is glitching up the whole system. It may be one of the things you send to the operating committee to start getting involved with to report back. But sometimes it is to draw down federal funds, where we literally get a short notice, and some of this happens when the federal government says, we're gonna close down. And Rose and I, or we have, with Rose's money, even with the UI system, which you're not involved with right now, but, thank God, but where we literally get told by our FPO out of Boston, draw down all the money you can before they close business, because they close up shop next week, where we literally have to go draw down federal dollars. That's kind of an emergency situation in my view, where we don't have time to wait for the next meeting of the SWIB in terms of telling you that we've had to draw down federal money. If there is something that we would consider an emergency situation, and that's why the board met, such as like a drawdown of federal funds or whatever, we would report out to you in 3 days. So the difference is sort of more mundane things like, like the board agreed to go participate in a UVM forum versus the emergency things. I think we were trying to say, tell you quickly and at least timely. One is, so that was the difference. These are just sort of the basics. You meet, the board is supposed to meet 3 times a year. We've been meeting more than that, but we're required to meet 3 times a year by state statute. You operate under a governance document in the law. The governance document, as we're proposing it, would be changed by the entire board with a 2/3 vote of those present and warned. If there are changes to this, we would ask, if anybody says, I don't like section X, we would ask for that to go to writing to the chair 20 days in advance of any meeting, and it would go out to the members 10 days in advance of any meeting, so you could look at it and decide if you like the proposed change or not. In addition, we would give notice of all meetings 10 days prior to the meeting. We publicly announce, we have to list things with the Department of Libraries. It goes on with state meeting notices. A quorum, right now, a quorum is majority of members present and voting. Right now, that's at least 29 people. It can be participating by any means determined by the chair. And so if people are not able to be here, bad weather, they've got to be someplace else, they can't leave their office, as long as they are able to participate in person by phone, that has been approved by the chair in electronic participation. At some point, if we ever get really fancy, maybe we'd have like video conferencing. I don't know how that works, but other people do. Executive session minutes are recorded, they're mailed, approved, they have to be publicly available. Executive session would only be in accordance with Vermont open meeting law. I think you all know how executive session work. There is a per diem rate for anybody who is not otherwise compensated being here today by your employer. There is a per diem rate. It's basically the state per diem rate of $50. And if you are not also getting mileage reimbursement, you're entitled to mileage reimbursement from that. That comes out of the federal workforce money, WIOA money. We can pay you your mileage if you're not otherwise being able to charge that to your employer. I know a lot of people are already here on state or other things you can put in for that. I think Nancy used to bring more forms, and we'll get back to doing that, but if you have any mileage or anything for us, you can just send it to us and we'll get it processed for you. Obviously, we would ask members to recuse yourself from any vote if you have a conflict, and the governance document says, obviously the conflicts are things like you personally have financial gain from the vote of this board, the basic ones, the usual, they're in the document, but you should understand that if you've got a specific conflict, you're expected to recuse yourself. Was that?
Yeah.
Did I just shut it off? Okay, good. Okay.
Are you comfortable moving this document forward today for the motion?
Which document?
The governance document. Get back up to this. I get a bunch of hands. Yeah.
Tom?
Yes.
Tom Longstrap. I was curious what we mean by, what's meant by business leaders. Are we defining that as?
Looking at business members.
Business members.
Business members.
Yeah.
It doesn't say business leaders
No.
in the document.
Oh, it doesn't, okay.
Just
What is
business
the?
members.
Yeah.
What's it?
So the question for people on the phone is, what is the difference between and the PowerPoint where I use the term business leader or business member? Really what we always says is that the people who are seated for business should be people who have policy-making authority with your organization. So it's basically, you can't send the file clerk to represent your business. You have to have somebody, would either be a CEO, a deputy CEO, a CFO, HR director, somebody who has some policy-making authority with your organization. No diminishing of respect for people who are file clerks, please.
But I guess I'm, my misunderstanding, generally when I think of business, I think of for-profit corporations.
I would call it enterprises,
Enterprise,
but
okay.
the federal government refers it to business.
Okay, but
That's-
you're
yeah.
we're broadly
They
thinking
haven't-
that
yeah.
it doesn't matter what type of
In Vermont, we have
incorporation or tax code.
institutions and nonprofits
Yep.
Now, there are-
and for-profit businesses.
And, there are, we can go over at some point, and maybe that makes some sense, and we have the list of how the feds require the board to be comprised. So there are people here who are here because they represent organizations that are involved in job training, or organizations who are involved with youth. I'm looking around the room trying to see, labor. There is a 20% requirement for I don't know if the chief is on the phone with us, like the Abenakis, Native American tribes have a seat, a designated seat under the federal law. So there are people in this room, as I look around, who I know are with the business community, who are with the labor community, or other special designated groups, or here based upon this very interesting mix of complying with both the federal and state law, where people are like some people here who are part of what they would consider key agency departments are actually listed by both federal and state law, so like commerce and labor and education and voc rehab, core partner organizations. So it's really, we can bring you the breakdown of how everybody here sits and what they sit for, if that would be helpful.
Federal government's very prescriptive representation and who, what constituencies, whatever, needs to be populated. Sorry, Janet had her.
Yeah, so the list of duties here is pretty extensive.
Yes.
And so what I'm trying to understand, and I haven't been involved in this for a long time, is how do we see the data and information to ensure those duties are being conducted? And it doesn't really matter which one of these you pick. You know, there's one here, you know, continuous improvement of workforce development system. Are we gonna see in some board meeting the continuous improvement of the workforce development system? I mean, we should be seeing measurable impacts, reporting, status of every single line item that's on our duties if we're gonna sign up to own and meet these duties. And then the other question I had is more of a question is, what is the board's fiscal responsibility?
Yeah.
Yeah, so your questions in terms of performance monitoring and improvement of performance will be in the federal reporting. So the measures that are negotiated, we believe that all of the Fed measures that are coming down for WIOA will in fact ask those questions and report on those questions. So again, we haven't seen the final common, there's common performance measures, and then there's some individual performance measures for each of the funding sources. But I do believe it will ask those same questions because WIOA keeps talking about that to show continuous improvement in the system. So we haven't fully seen what those will look like, but I did, again, I captured what I thought will be coming down the pike from the not yet issued federal regs. In terms of financial obligations, you would basically authorize, one of the pieces that we're coming to will be drawdown of federal dollars. How does that occur? And what you would want us to basically share the same thing with you that we have to share back to the feds, which is our fiscal reporting. So we do performance reporting and fiscal reporting, and you would be able to see, for example, in a Department of Labor report, under, let's just say, under WIOA, let's say like dislocated workers. You would be able to see how much money the Department of Labor received to assist dislocated workers, and how that money was spent. So it might say it was spent in their staff's costs, there were participant costs. You could actually see if we put people into training. We actually can run, obviously we can't share names per se, but we can share aggregate. So you would see where the money's going. If we were spending money to support 20 people who got laid off from Fairpoint in actual dislocated worker training, you could actually see where did they go for training.
So maybe I wasn't clear on my question. So that's great, because that to me is reporting and review. But the exact words in this document say, you know, shall assist in the development of strategies, the development of this. I don't understand how the actual practice of this board and the meeting structure results in us actually doing those actions versus simply reviewing and reading reports. And I don't know if I'm being clear or not, but that it's a big concern to me that we are writing down something that we're expected to do and sign up to do, but I don't see how we actually do it.
So I think that because there have never been really, I guess what I would say is the proactive versus reactive. The reactive of reading the reports and how we're doing. The proactive is basically us telling you this is what we anticipate doing with the federal dollars that are coming to Vermont. And generally speaking, we do have a general idea of about how much money will come in for different programs. Trade is a bit of an exception because trade is a drawdown. And we don't know, month to month, if a plant is going to close and we're going to have a big trade program, a big trade change. So, but on the other programs, we should be able to give you, as a board, a general idea of how much money we anticipate getting from the feds and how that money is anticipated to be used. I agree with you, you've never seen that before, we've never brought that before, but the anticipation for going forward for WIOA, full implementation of WIOA, is that the programs share with you the planning. This is what we think we're gonna do with the X number of dollars we receive from the feds. That has not happened to date.
So
The
I think
past
you
was
have
more
to have-
ratifying than.
Yeah, I think you have to have the structure then in the board meetings that brings these duties forward in a before it's done mode. If we're signing up to review and approve and support and review, they have to be on the agendas of these meetings so that we can actually execute these duties. Otherwise, it's an interesting list, but I guess at a personal level, I don't feel like we can sign up to execute it if I don't see how I'm ever gonna see the information.
Couple of things, Annie, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Janet, and I agree with you, but I also think there's a lot of the things that we have duties to oversee are already in place. How the one-stop system functions as an example. So it would seem to me that some of that is to the extent the department wanted, or this board wanted to make a change in how things were established, that would be something we would clearly review. Assessing performance is something that this board would review, and it would be through reporting on the measures and things of that nature. So, but I think Janet's point about how do we, I mean, identification of barriers and means of removing barriers. I mean, some of these things, it's pretty nitty-gritty, and you have staff who do a lot of that work, but we could also choose to evaluate or learn more about some of those programs. But it would seem to me where we can add value is what changes do we think could happen, what changes do you want to see happen that you want input and input and design assistance on, as well as ratification of already what's happening. So I think there's a little bit of both there from just my perspective. My other question, or I have two questions, one's really hair splitting, the other is, as you get those measures, it's not anticipated those measures would necessarily go in this governance document, but it would go in the overall plan. Is that fair to say, or?
At least by reference, they have to, I mean,
Okay.
we won't see them in time for the plan.
Right,
So the
right.
plan will just say that we will comply with the federal performance measures. We won't know what those are until after March 3rd. The plan's gotta be up and running by March 3rd.
So it's something, but it will be there, this is probably a discussion when we get to the plan phase, but was there anticipated there'd be an amendment to the plan that might incorporate those, or it really depends?
I think the smartest thing to do is just to say that we shall comply with whatever the federal
Yeah,
performance
yeah.
measures are. Then we don't have to come back and amend the plan, but we should all know that we would have no authority to tell the feds no on any of that anyway. So we just say, by adoption, we shall adopt and we shall comply with the federal performance measures, because they will be what they will be.
My last sort of nitty-gritty question is on the reimbursement piece. Does that mean folks, and I know this doesn't apply to me, but who may need reimbursement would be regardless of their method of participation, either physically here or on the phone? Question number one. And are they reimbursed for participation in committee meetings too? Question number two. I don't know what your lawyer
Let me answer
said.
number two first. If we pull you in for any meeting, you are entitled to reimbursement. Obviously, if you're participating by phone, I don't anticipate seeing a mileage sheet from you. But if in fact you took time away from your job, or or again, the whole comment is you're not otherwise being compensated by somebody. So if you're participating in a meeting, and nobody's compensating you otherwise, then you are entitled to that per diem. Obviously, it's sort of like if you're carpooling, the person who's driving the car who filled the gas tank should be compensated for the mileage, not the rider. I mean, the basic common sense thing.
I'm just wondering whether the participation in committee meetings, or regardless of method of participation, should be outlined in this document. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
On page 4, the line above purpose, adult tech ed is a subset of career and tech ed, not two different entities. So I suspect what was intended there is adult education and literacy, or career and tech ed.
Okay, I'll fix that.
I'm not seeing
I
that.
don't see that.
That's on page 4 in terms of the membership.
Oh, of the PowerPoint,
Yep.
sorry, not the draft
Yeah.
document,
Oh.
okay.
Sorry.
Not to harp on this, but, so is this written, it's clearly written by lawyers.
Yes.
Yes.
And if my lawyers to read this, we redline all this stuff out, all these responsibilities. To Janet's point, like, this isn't something this board is set up to do right now. So how are we gonna get set up to do that?
Some of it is going to be in the MOU
Right,
between
so-
the department and.
Right, so some of this is like,
Yeah.
we're required to do this under the
This-
federal
These are the
legislation.
authorities under the federal, duties, responsibility, and authorities under the federal legislation and state legislation.
So does that mean we have to be set up to execute on all these, correct?
Yes, and some of them will be executed in the MOU that we're doing with the state that we're gonna be taking up.
You know,
Right.
can I give a practical answer to that, Mike?
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so, in essence, the federal WIOA law basically says, you know, we really want your money to be, but any money coming to the state to be guided and overseen by your state workforce board. So that, you know, we don't go, that nobody goes off and does something really stupid with federal money is what the feds feel. Do I think that they anticipate that you will, every meeting, deal with every single issue? I think the answer to that is no. I think they want you to push towards employment of people, business services, making sure the businesses have people that they need when they're recruiting, that people, Vermonters have the opportunity to be trained effectively and for jobs that exist, that we support people in efforts for literacy, financial literacy, career pathways. I don't think that they are going to come to Vermont and ever audit us and say, there's 100 things that your SWIB was supposed to do when they only did 10. Frankly, I think that they feel that if you are focusing on, really the focus and the shortest thing is help Vermonters go to work, help businesses find employees, help people continue their education and be educated. I really think it's sort of, that's the primary measure. I think that they don't want us to, any one of the organizations that we receive federal money, they don't want us operating in a manner that is not transparent. That's why they say, bring your performance reports, bring your money reports. They want everybody to see what's going on, but I don't think that they necessarily feel that you're gonna be able to do all of these tasks 3 times a year. It's just not possible. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it helps, it's just
It is overwhelming, it's really kind of overwhelming,
typical
because
government.
it, you said, yeah.
Federal government.
Not to generalize.
I think this sort of follows Mike and Janet's comments as I'm sitting here thinking about this, and times I've wanted to know, so when did the executive committee decide that, and who's talking about what, and what is the youth committee doing? Is there a way
We
that?
don't even have an operating committee yet. We will appoint one.
Okay.
But, you know, previously, the Workforce Development Council, and then before that, it was the HRIC.
Oh, I remember all of that.
Had
I'm just, and I
an
had
executive
similar thoughts
committee.
then.
Yeah,
I'm
and then it
just
kind of went
wondering.
dormant because of discussions with the legislature on their changes, and then the federal changes as well. So-
Could there be even a website that was open to SWIB members,
Mhm.
where all of this stuff, as soon as it's done, could be posted? Because I did wanna see this draft, I got it yesterday, and really, I did my best this morning, but I don't feel prepared to come sit here and say, sure, go.
Yep.
And I know that's what you need. So is there some place that this stuff, any committee minutes, things could be put where we could check in and out?
Absolutely.
I propose that we do this because I sat here at the past 2 meetings with people going, you know, what are we here for? What are we
Right.
supposed to do?
How
And
do
what
we do
is
it?
our authority and what's the process? And it kind of memorialized what our responsibilities are. And that's why we did it. If you're not comfortable, we can edit this and we can amend it at future meetings. If you're not comfortable moving it forward today, we'll wait until February. But that's your call.
I think we have to wait, but also, to like all these points, like how do we, like some of the stuff's really great.
Yep.
Like how do we move meetings towards more of this stuff than what we have been doing in the past years? I think that would be much more effective for
that these are the areas to function on.
Yeah,
Our
this
first
is
two
like our
meetings was
purpose.
basically to inform us of the market that we're in, the challenges that we have, the resources that we're dealing with. It was kind of a tutorial for all of us
Yeah.
to know what is the world that we're dealing with. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right, Danny Batista. I mean, I'm hearing the concerns, but we're not a board of directors. We have no authority, basically. You know, maybe board is the wrong word. I mean, right in the beginning of this article, you know, this governance document says that basically we're advisors to the governor. And that's what we're here to do. We have no authority, really. Isn't that correct? And maybe there should be something in there to say, what is the board's authority? Because we're not a board of directors. We can't control state monies or anything like that. And if the governor decides to do something different, he does something different. Is that kind of it in a nutshell, or?
It's true that if the board were to say, don't draw that federal money down, even though the government's closing down a week from Friday, the governor does not have to accept that recommendation. The governor can say, no, I'm drawing down federal dollars before the government closes. So that is true. But really what the feds hope is that the SWIP will take an active role, because they know that each governor has a lot of stuff on their plate, and workforce development, while it's absolutely a critical component of any governor's role, is to ensure a viable workforce, they could also be dealing with Hurricane Irene. So they're basically saying, your members of the SWIB should be telling the governor what's working and not working, and telling the governor what way to go on certain things. Again, if we saw an entity really falling down on the job, and this board were to try to get involved and kind of put that in there, it may be a recommendation to the governor that something change in state government. If it was a partner agency, it might be a recommendation to our congressional delegation that they've given federal dollars to a required partner, I'm gonna make something up, let's just say a Job Corps. Didn't mean to pick on Job Corps. But just let's say Job Corps we don't give them the money, they draw directly down from the feds. So we might say, that's not working, and we're gonna tell the congressional delegation. On the other hand, we might say, want to put a letter of support and say, Vermont Youth Build has been an incredibly successful program, and we support the Youth Build program, so when Tom goes to file a grant next year for Youth Build, that he has a letter signed by the members of the SWIB. So it's those kinds of things, if that helps you.
I was just gonna ask if I could, I mean, wouldn't it have more meaning if these things that were outlined on page 1 were able to be accomplished? I understand that there is a requirement, and that there's a bare bones requirement for federal guidelines, but in order for this to be a meaningful group that could influence, not really have authority, but influence the decision of working towards continuous workforce development improvement, that would mean probably more frequent meetings and more focused meetings on these specific tasks. If we were to agree to that, would people feel more comfortable that indeed these are duties of the board?
I think that yes, and I also think that work groups so we're required to have a youth council, that's a federal requirement, so we do. But you can also have a work group that focuses on how to bring more people, I'm looking at Diane, how to bring more people with disabilities and, connect them to the employer community. How to bring more women into non-traditional occupations. I think there is an anticipation that key programmatic issues can be designated, because not everybody's gonna be able to come to a lot more meetings every year, but we can in fact get people who are critically interested in certain key aspects of the workforce development and training and education system to join together to do more work.
For the purposes of trying to move this along, I'm going to make a motion that we, to approve the governance model as presented. And I'm happy to have more discussion, but I think the main thing is that that I hear both Mike and Janet saying, is if we can start to structure these meetings such that we can get more information on things like what are the barriers that help us, to better coordinating, aligning, and avoiding duplication? What are the strategies to support the use of career pathways? And I think that's easily done, because I think Dan is absolutely right. We're advisory. We're not really a governing board. I don't think we're gonna fall under, what's the federal law? Sarbanes-Oxley as it relates to this board. So, you know, that's why I'm interested in moving this forward, but I absolutely agree. We really ought to, especially for those who have not been in this game for a while, structure so that the information, the reports, et cetera. I like Lynn's idea of a central repository, but that we set up presentations by the department or VR, whomever, that really help us focus in on these issues, because I'm also agreeing with Joan that if we could really focus on the page one and how we do continuous improvement and all that, then, you know, we're gonna declare victory here, but, so I'll make a motion to approve the governance document as presented.
Second, is there any further discussion? If not,
I think, you know, it gives you the authority to set up committees. And I think you'd have review committees, you could have development committees. You know, when I was on North Hampton School Board, we finally said, look, we're not gonna meet till after 9:30, because by then my patients had it and I could have it at 4:30. So we did more through committees, and the committees brought to the full board what needed to be voted on. I think you can do a lot with committees, with emails, and like you said, with a central spot, you can see where the committees work on, people can comment. I don't think it's number of meetings per year, but what you can get done in between meetings.
committees and work groups,
Yes.
and there's a lot of expertise here, and there's a lot of interest in different areas, so I think we can really, by establishing more work groups or committees, we can tackle different areas and then report back to the board and inform the board. Any other?
Yeah, Chris Forrest, I'm a little bit too much of a policy wonk. Just want to point out that once we take this vote, we will be subject to open meeting laws, and that means anytime somebody is on a conference call, it means roll call.
Right.
Roll call, with possibly, how many people sitting here? Up to 40? So just, I'm just throwing that out there for situational awareness.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Hi, Chris.
Is somebody
Jen.
trying to speak on the phone?
Does anybody on the phone have any comments? This is Annie speaking. Anybody on the phone want to weigh in on this?
Jen.
Well, I know a motion's already been made, but is it more efficient to wait until the beginning of February to discuss this more, until we know what the federal regulations are anyway?
They won't be out until after March.
After March.
We
I
don't
thought
even
it was-
know when.
I thought it was February,
No.
March 3rd.
Just add, I mean, I think one of the places where this board perhaps fell down and wasn't as effective in the past is, particularly with such a large group, is not feeling like they were engaged much in
Right.
addressing these very issues. That there was a lot of recitation and a lot of, here's what we did, not a lot of what do you think,
Yep.
and how would you make these changes? So that's why I think the point about structuring and giving opportunities to learn what's happening, who are the players, how effective, is gonna be really important, because, I mean, especially, don't wanna speak for the employers in the room, but, you know, I hear it every day, I can't find enough skilled labor, and here's a tool for help trying to provide that skilled labor, and so I get the sense folks really wanna get their fingers dirty, and I think that's a good thing, and I think it's good to get more engagement, in by this group in this process, so. But I really look at this as more kind of, yeah, okay, gotta check the box here. Similarly with the MOU, and as I said before, I mean, I think the meat of the matter really comes in the plan and the strategies and how we're actually gonna move the needle. And so that's part of why I'm saying, let's just get some of this legal stuff done and move on to the meat of the matter, so.
Any other comments, edits, amendments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstain? Okay. Thank you.